I'm Nick Malkoutzis, the editor of MacroPolis. Welcome to this video discussion, which is being produced in association with Agenda Publica and the Future is Blue newsletter. Our topic today is the recent agreement reached after lengthy negotiations in Brussels on the multi-annual financial framework and the next generation EU recovery package, totaling 1.82 trillion euros, of which Greece could receive more than 70 billion. We're going to assess what this deal could mean from a Greek perspective. To do that, I'm joined by Maria Demertzis, the Deputy Director of the Bruegel think tank in Brussels. Maria, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation. Delighted to be here.
You've been right in the heart of the action over the last few days with those marathon negotiations. I'd like to start off by talking quantity rather than the quality aspects of the discussions. When we add together the money Greece is in line to receive from the MFF, from the Recovery Fund grants and the loans being made available, the total comes to around 70 billion euros. This is more than a third of Greece's annual GDP. Do you see this moving the needle as far as the Greek economy is concerned over the next few years?
Yeah, it is a big number. I mean, in all senses of the word. The comparison of the amount received and the GDP is not entirely appropriate, if I may say so, because the GDP is something that's produced in 1 year, whereas this money is earmarked for the length of the whole budget lifespan, which is 7 years. So, you know, if you were to make an appropriate comparison, you need to compare with the GDP times 7, if that were the case. Now, that said, it is really a big number. 70 billion is unprecedented. And let's try and sort of evaluate why this is a big number. I mean, I think I'd like to go back to the budget itself, the traditional budget, what you call the MFF, the multi-annual budget. It was about 1.1 trillion, and on that, the New Generation Fund added 750 billion. So, you know, it went up by about 70%. This is really substantial. So in that respect, this is a real big step forward. On top of that, you also have the form, which is new. You have two elements which are crucial here. A big chunk of the 750 million is grants. So it really continues the nature of the budget of the multi-annual framework, which is also in the form of grants. And then it adds on this another 350 billion, which is in the form of loans. That's the first thing that is new. It's loans for the budget. And the second thing that is new is that this 750 billion will be issued commonly, so it will be a common debt. This had never happened before, and it is really quite extraordinary, given that a few months ago the idea of common issuance of debt was unthought of. I mean, you know, you'd asked me a few months ago whether this is impossible. So yeah, so it's big not only in sense of numbers, but it's big in ideas, in the sense that it is it really it puts down new instruments, new forms of lending that only a few months ago would have thought to be impossible almost.
Right. You mentioned the loans, and given the reluctance that has been shown by Greece and everyone else in the Eurozone to make use of the ESM credit line because of this perceived political toxicity around it, the legacy, if you like, particularly from the Greek bailout programs.
No, of course.
Is it possible that the recovery fund loans, which in Greece's case amount to around 12 billion euros, will go untouched? Or are the strings that come attached so insignificant that it won't deter Athens or other European capitals?
Okay, let's examine the case first before the perceptions, because I mean, you're quite right. I think there is an element of perception here that is quite it's creating an obstacle for the use of these funds. The loans that have been given in the context of European institutions are in the form of the ESM. But also there is the SURE fund, which is a European Commission fund, earmarked for unemployment purposes. And then, of course, there is the enablement that has happened through the quantitative easing by the ECB, whereby the country can now go out in the markets and borrow. All of this is lending, but it is just lending in different form. To that, we've now added and there's also the EIB, the European Investment Bank, but that's also earmarked for small and medium-sized firms. On top of that, now we have the European Commission, we have the new loans coming from the Commission. All of them entail a different type of governance. And it is in governance that you have what you call the strings attached. And it's important to differentiate between the institutions, because the ESM, which is effectively the institution, the European institution, in fact, it's not exactly a European institution, but it is at the European level. It is the institution that lends out to countries when they're in distress. And Greece being, of course, the obvious. Eventually was the ESM that lent the money to Greece, and with the troika type of conditionality attached to it, which is what you call toxic. And the new tranche that the ESM earmarked for the COVID-19 does not have the conditionality that the traditional ESM lending does. So that's an important provision here. Whether people believe that is a different story, but the ESM does not have the conditionality that it does. The 12 billion that you mentioned, which is now the part assigned to Greece in the form of loans from the New Generation Fund, comes with a different type of governance. It's going to have, first of all, the Commission executing it. But this time around, the European Council, namely it will actually be the finance ministers, they will have a say in terms of whether money can be released. So because this money is meant for particular purposes, and it needs to be done according to the rules. So this time around, the European Council has secured for itself a lot more power to determine whether this money can be granted or not, or can be loaned or not. So the governance in each type of loan type that has been assigned to countries has got a different type of governance, and it matters. It is also true, however, that let's go back to the ESM, the original ESM loan that one of the first tools that was put forward at the beginning of the crisis. Nobody has used that, and my sense is that nobody will. Because the ESM is very much thought of as kind of the troika part, and it comes with huge conditionalities in the original form. Even though this time it does not, it is very difficult to convince politicians that actually this doesn't have strings attached that are very very erroneous. I mean, as it had been for a Greek problem, for example. So I think the perception is such for the original ESM loan that it will not allow countries to free themselves of that kind of perception that there will be a lot of conditionality, a lot of interference. The 12 billion, however, comes with a very new type of governance, and that is important, first of all, to see how it will play out, and secondly, whether we're actually going to need it. So I think we need to start with the grants, put them to good use, and if those grants are sort of generating the value added that they should, then perhaps we won't need those. And remember, a loan is a loan; it needs to be repaid, and it adds up to the public debt. So Greece has got a very, very big public debt, and adding to that is not the first. It should be the line of last defense, not of first defense.
Now, on the issue of the grants, obviously the Greek economy, like every other European economy, is going to suffer this year, and the European Commission expects it to contract by 9% and only expand by 6% next year, which means that the brakes have well and truly been put on the recovery that we saw as Greece exited its third bailout a few years ago. In your view, what kind of projects should Greece be investing the recovery fund package in order to stimulate the economy on one hand, but also make a lasting difference to the country's growth model as well on the other?
Yeah, it's really truly unfortunate, the timing of this pandemic as far as the Greek economy is concerned. I mean, it's unfortunate for any country, but for Greece that has gone through a very big recession, a lasting recession, of a 10-year recession. And now you really see sort of the economy coming up, and yet again the brakes have been put on as a result of the shutdown, effectively. Well, there we are. I mean, that's not the issue. However, it has brought Europeans together. It has brought new funds. It has brought new grants for Greece. So it is now a unique opportunity, given where we are, to put this into good use. Before I answer your question, which sectors, I mean, I think I'd like to make a distinction between money for consumption and money for investment. I think it would be a big mistake to use the money given to us through grants for consumption purposes. I think that is, tempting though this is, to try and encourage people to consume. This isn't a good and lasting way of spending money. This should need to be earmarked for investments. Anything that is going to increase the productive capacity of the country in a lasting manner and in a good manner, productive manner, is the only way we should be thinking about spending this money. Otherwise, it will be a one-off expense that would not actually help Greece in any lasting way. And quite frankly, I think there will be objections by, as I said, the governing bodies behind this money. Now, in terms of which sectors, I am a very big believer of the climate issues, and I think Greece has got the potential to engage in transforming its energy capacity because of its natural resources, the sun, the water, the wind, and it requires a lot of investments to do that. But I think this is exactly where we need to go, not in depleted resources, because I think this is something that inevitably has to happen. The quicker it does, it will achieve two objectives: the climate issue, of course, but secondly, will also release some of the resources that are now spent for energy, which it affects the current account in a very negative way. So if it left to me, the energy transition would be where I would put most of my eggs, as it were. That requires infrastructure, and I think the other thing is infrastructure. All infrastructure investments that need to happen, connectivity, as well as the energy transition would be crucial for a country like Greece. Greece is a country, I think it is the country in the EU with the smallest reliance on exports. And if we are thinking about creating a new productive model, we need to have a more balanced growth model that relies not only on a domestic demand, but also on foreign demand. This is exactly the opposite of what countries like Germany and the Netherlands have, who are export giants, who need to go the other way. They need to rely a little bit more on domestic consumption and a little bit less on exports, because they become also vulnerable to external shocks. Greece needs to do the other thing, exactly the opposite. It needs to increase its exports in order to have a more balanced approach to its growth, and it's going to sustain it for the long term. The IMF model of growth had been, in the past 20 years, a model of export relying growth. I think that model, given the interconnectivity now and the vulnerabilities that this has shown, we're going to go down towards more a balanced approach. Nevertheless, Greece has got a very long way to go to achieve that balance from the other side. It needs to really identify those exports that have got the more potential, pharmaceuticals, for example, and invest in them.
Okay, Maria, and to finish, one final question, if we can look more at the political aspect of these negotiations. As you know, over the last few months, a lot of negative sentiment has been generated in Greece and elsewhere within the EU regarding the stance of the so-called Bruegel countries. Now that we have a deal, do you think that's all water under the bridge, or is there danger that lasting damage has been done to relationships between member states and within the EU?
I don't think so, and I certainly hope not. Look, there is, the politics is what it is, and it's the result of many different things. That is not for us to discuss right now, but it does lead to certain politics. I mean, I just give you an example also of the cycle, how the political cycle plays. The Netherlands, which is, if I may say so, the leading country of the Frugal Four or Frugal Five, is actually in electoral mode. So the Prime Minister, who has been negotiating and very in a rather strong manner, is actually speaking to his domestic electorate, and he's trying to win elections. So that has added to the pressure, if you like, for extracting rents, effectively. All the events up till now, not all of them have been correct, and we've made mistakes in the EU, and we need to learn from them. But I think that there isn't anybody that is trying to undermine the EU project inside the EU, and I'm talking about the governments here. There is populist voices that may be thinking differently. But there isn't anybody from the democratically elected governments who are trying to cause damage, who are trying to split Europe. There isn't going to be another Brexit. That just isn't there. I think, if anything, as you've seen, the direction of travel is the other way. We are going more on the integration side. So look, politics is what it is, and Greece has always got its own share of difficult politics. And that is inevitable. Some of it, at least, is inevitable. The rest, we need to be able to move on. We've achieved a good outcome. There is always need for leadership, not only in the EU but everywhere. And so I will always be, craving to have good leaders who can see a little bit beyond their political agenda. But I mean, we must be pragmatic here and to ensure that we move in the right direction.
Yeah, I think those kinds of leaders are in short supply at the moment, but let's see where we go. Obviously, it's a positive that there was an agreement and we can move on from this point. Maria Demertzis, thank you very much for providing us with this insight and this lightning look at the major decisions taken in Brussels over the past few days. Thank you for joining us on this video discussion.
Thank you for having me.